As the alien soldier, Sarnak, stepped onto the grounds of the human military academy, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. Towering over the human cadets, with his reptilian scales shimmering in the Earth's sunlight, he cut an imposing figure. But beneath his formidable exterior, Sarnak harbored a curiosity about the species he had traveled light years to encounter. The cadets, with their crisp uniforms and eager expressions, gathered around Sarnak, their chatter filled with whispers of anticipation. They had only ever heard tales of aliens from distant galaxies, and now one stood before them, a living testament to the vastness of the universe. Sarnak, for his part, greeted the humans with a polite nod, his translator device humming softly as it converted his native language into the human tongue. Though his words were simple, they carried the weight of centuries of interstellar travel and exploration. As the Academy's instructors led Sarnak on a tour of the facilities, he marveled at the human technology that surrounded him. From the sleek fighter jets that lined the runway to the advanced weaponry on display in the armory, Sarnak couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the ingenuity of his newfound allies. But as the tour continued, Sarnak couldn't shake off the feeling of being an outsider in a foreign land. The cadets, though friendly and welcoming, seemed to regard him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. They asked him questions about his home planet, his species, and his experiences as a soldier, but Sarnak couldn't help but sense an undercurrent of unease beneath their polite smiles. Despite his best efforts to fit in, Sarnak couldn't escape the feeling of isolation that hung over him like a dark cloud. He longed for the familiarity of his own kind, for the comfort of his home planet's rugged terrain and endless skies. But as he looked out at the human cadets, with their bright eyes and eager faces, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, Sarnak thought to himself, this encounter with humanity would be the beginning of a new era of cooperation and understanding. Perhaps, in the vast expanse of the cosmos, there was room for two species to coexist peacefully, to learn from one another, and to forge bonds that transcended the boundaries of space and time. With that thought in mind, Sarnak squared his shoulders and pressed on, determined to make the most of his time at the Human Military Academy. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles he may face, he knew that he carried with him the hopes and dreams of his entire species. And so, with a newfound sense of purpose, Sarnak ventured forth into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever the future held in store. For in the vastness of the universe, anything was possible, and with courage and determination, even the stars themselves were within reach. As Sarnak delved deeper into his experience at the Human Military Academy, he found himself immersed in a whirlwind of cultural exchange, unlike anything he had ever known. From the moment he arrived, the cadets and instructors had eagerly embraced the opportunity to learn about his alien heritage, and Sarnak, in turn, had eagerly absorbed everything the humans had to offer. One of the highlights of Sarnak's visit was the opportunity to observe human combat training firsthand. From hand-to-hand combat drills to simulated battlefield scenarios, Sarnak watched in awe as the cadets honed their skills with precision and discipline. Though the techniques were unfamiliar to him, Sarnak couldn't help but admire the humans' dedication to their craft. But the cultural exchange wasn't limited to military matters. Sarnak also had the chance to learn about human art, music, and literature, experiencing firsthand the rich tapestry of human creativity. He attended lectures on human history and philosophy, engaging in spirited debates with the cadets and instructors as they explored the complexities of the human condition. In return, Sarnak shared stories of his own people, regaling the cadets with tales of his homeworld's rugged landscapes and ancient traditions. He demonstrated his species' unique combat techniques, showcasing the agility and strength that made him a formidable warrior in his own right. And he even taught the cadets a few words of his native language, much to their delight. But amidst the laughter and camaraderie, Sarnak couldn't shake off the feeling of being an outsider in a strange land. Though the humans welcomed him with open arms, there were moments when he felt acutely aware of the differences that separated them. His alien physiology, with its reptilian features and shimmering scales, often drew curious stares from the cadets, and there were times when Sarnek found himself struggling to bridge the gap between their worlds. Yet, despite the challenges, Sarnek pressed on, determined to make the most of his time at the academy. He forged friendships with the cadets, bonding over shared experiences and common interests. He listened intently as they shared stories of their own lives and experiences, finding common ground in the universal language of friendship. As the days passed, Sarnek found himself growing more and more accustomed to life among the humans. He reveled in the hustle and bustle of the academy, the camaraderie of his fellow soldiers, and the sense of purpose that came with each new day. And though he knew that his time at the academy would eventually come to an end, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness at the thought of saying goodbye to his newfound friends. But as Sarnek looked out at the horizon, with its endless possibilities stretching out before him, he felt a sense of optimism wash over him. For in the vast expanse of the cosmos, there was room for two species to coexist peacefully, to learn from one another, and to forge bonds that transcended the boundaries of space and time. And as Sarnek ventured forth into the unknown, he knew that he carried with him the hopes and dreams of his entire species, a beacon of light in a universe filled with darkness. The day of the combat simulation dawned. Sarnek felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This would be his chance to put his skills to the test alongside the human cadets, to prove himself in the heat of battle. Little did he know, the simulation would push him to his limits and challenge everything he thought he knew about warfare. The simulation began with a briefing from the Academy's instructors, who outlined the scenario. A hostile alien invasion force was threatening Earth, and it was up to Sarnek and the cadets to repel the enemy and defend their planet at all costs. Armed with advanced weapons and tactical gear, they would face off against a series of increasingly challenging opponents in a series of simulated battles. As the simulation got underway, Sarnek found himself swept up in the chaos of battle. The cadets moved with precision and coordination, their training kicking in as they executed their maneuvers with flawless efficiency. But as Sarnek soon discovered, human tactics were unlike anything he had ever encountered. The cadets employed a combination of stealth, strategy, and sheer firepower to outmaneuver and overwhelm their opponents. They used cover and concealment to their advantage, laying down suppressing fire and flanking their enemies with deadly precision. And all the while, Sarnek struggled to keep up, his alien instincts clashing with the disciplined approach of the human soldiers. But as the simulation wore on, Sarnek began to adapt to the cadets' tactics, drawing on his own experiences as a soldier to anticipate their movements and counter their attacks. He used his superior strength and agility to outmaneuver his opponents, taking advantage of his alien physiology to turn the tide of battle in his favor. As the final wave of enemies descended upon them, Sarnek and the cadets fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they held the line against overwhelming odds. With each passing moment, Sarnek felt a sense of camaraderie and respect grow between him and his human comrades, a bond forged in the crucible of battle. And when the dust finally settled, and the simulation came to an end, Sarnek stood victorious alongside the cadets, their faces flushed with triumph and adrenaline. Though the battle had been fierce and the challenges daunting, they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. As they gathered to debrief, Sarnek couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. Though they hailed from different worlds and walked different paths, they were bound together by a common purpose: to defend their home and protect their loved ones from harm. And as Sarnek looked out at the faces of his fellow soldiers, he knew that he had found a home among them, a place where he belonged. For in the heat of battle, amidst the chaos and confusion, there was one thing that remained constant: the unbreakable bond of brotherhood forged in the fires of war. After the exhilarating combat simulation, Sarnek and the cadets gathered for a debriefing session with the Academy's instructors. As they settled into their seats, anticipation hung thick in the air. mingled with a sense of exhaustion from the intense battle they had just endured. The lead instructor, a grizzled veteran with decades of military experience, stood at the front of the room, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group. With a nod of acknowledgement, he began the debriefing, his voice carrying the weight of authority and experience. Today's simulation was a valuable learning experience for all of us, the instructor began, his tone firm but fair. We faced a formidable enemy, and we were tested in ways we never could have imagined. But despite the challenges, we emerged victorious, thanks to the bravery and skill of each and every one of you. As the instructor spoke, Sarnak couldn't help but feel a swell of pride in his chest. Though he had initially struggled to keep up with the cadets' tactics, he had fought alongside them with all the courage and determination he could muster. And now, as they sat together in the aftermath of battle, he felt a sense of camaraderie and respect wash over him. But as the debriefing continued, Sarnak's sense of pride soon gave way to confusion and frustration. The instructors began to dissect the simulation, pointing out areas where the cadets had excelled and areas where they had fallen short. And though Sarnak had fought with all his might, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being singled out for criticism. "Sarnak, you showed great bravery in the face of the enemy," the lead instructor said, his voice tinged with a note of caution. "But there were moments when your actions put yourself and your fellow soldiers at risk. You need to learn to anticipate your opponent's movements and react accordingly, rather than relying solely on brute force." Sarnak bristled at the criticism, feeling a surge of anger and indignation rise within him. He had fought with everything he had, using his superior strength and agility to outmaneuver his opponents and protect his comrades. And yet, it seemed that his efforts were not enough to earn him the instructor's approval. But as he listened to the feedback, Sarnak forced himself to swallow his pride and acknowledge the truth in their words. Though he had fought valiantly, there were indeed moments when his actions had been reckless and impulsive, putting himself and others in unnecessary danger. With a heavy heart, Sarnak vowed to learn from his mistakes and strive to do better in the future. Though the path ahead would be challenging, he knew that he had the strength and determination to overcome any obstacle that stood in his way. As the debriefing drew to a close, Sarnak rose from his seat, his resolve strengthened by the challenges he had faced. Though the road ahead would be long and difficult, he knew that he had the support of his fellow soldiers and the guidance of his instructors to help him along the way. And with that thought in mind, Sarnak squared his shoulders and stepped out into the uncertain future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and determination. For in the end, he knew that it was not the victories that defined him, but the lessons he learned along the way. As the night fell over the military academy, Sarnak retreated to his quarters, seeking solace in the solitude of his room. But as he lay down to rest, he found himself plagued by vivid nightmares that seemed to claw at the edges of his consciousness. In his dreams, he found himself back on the battlefield, surrounded by the chaos and confusion of war. The sounds of gunfire and explosions echoed in his ears, while the screams of the wounded and dying filled the air. And in the midst of it all, Sarnak fought desperately to hold his ground, his heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. But no matter how hard he fought, the enemy seemed to be everywhere, their relentless assault pushing him to the brink of despair. And as the nightmare unfolded, Sarnak felt a sense of helplessness wash over him, as if he were trapped in a never-ending cycle of violence and destruction. When he awoke, his heart racing and his body covered in sweat, Sarnak couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that lingered in the air. The nightmare had felt so real, so visceral, that it took him several moments to remind himself that he was safe, that he was no longer on the battlefield, but in the confines of his own room. But try as he might, Sarnak couldn't push the memories of the nightmare from his mind. They haunted him like ghosts, lurking in the shadows of his subconscious, waiting to pounce when he least expected it. And as the hours ticked by, he found himself unable to sleep, unable to escape the clutches of his own fears. As the days turned into weeks, the nightmares continued to plague Sarnak, each one more terrifying than the last. He tried to push them aside, to focus on his training and his duties as a soldier, but the memories of the battlefield refused to be silenced. They followed him like a shadow, lurking just beneath the surface of his consciousness, waiting for the opportunity to strike. And as the nightmares grew more frequent and more intense, Zarnak found himself struggling to maintain his composure. He grew irritable and withdrawn, snapping at his fellow soldiers and retreating into solitude whenever he could. He couldn't bear to face the horrors that lurked within his own mind, couldn't bear to confront the demons that threatened to consume him whole. But amidst the darkness, there was a glimmer of light, a beacon of hope that shone through the shadows. It came in the form of his fellow soldiers, who stood by his side through thick and thin, offering him support and understanding when he needed it most. They reminded him that he was not alone, that he had comrades in arms who would stand by him no matter what. And slowly but surely, Zarnak began to find solace in their presence, to draw strength from their unwavering support. Though the nightmares still haunted him, they no longer held him captive in their grip. He had faced his fears head-on, and though the battle was far from over, he knew that he had the courage and the determination to emerge victorious in the end. And as he closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a sense of calm that he hadn't felt in weeks. For though the nightmares would always be a part of him, they no longer held the power to control him. He was a soldier, a warrior, and he would face whatever challenges came his way with courage and resilience. Despite the camaraderie and mutual respect that had developed between Zarnak and the human cadets, there remained a deep-seated cultural divide that threatened to undermine their burgeoning friendship. Try as they might, they found themselves constantly navigating the treacherous waters of misunderstanding and miscommunication, their differences serving as a barrier between them. One of the biggest challenges Zarnak faced was understanding the nuances of human social interaction. In his culture, directness and honesty were valued above all else, while subtlety and tact were often seen as signs of weakness. But among the humans, the opposite seemed to be true, with subtle cues and unspoken gestures carrying far more weight than words ever could. Time and time again, Zarnak found himself stumbling over the intricacies of human communication, his straightforward manner often coming across as brusque or insensitive. He struggled to read the subtle signals that passed between the cadets, often finding himself at a loss when it came to deciphering their true intentions and emotions. Similarly, the cadets found themselves grappling with the alien customs and traditions that defined Zarnak's culture. From his stoic demeanor to his hierarchical social structure, everything about Zarnak seemed to clash with their own values and beliefs. And though they tried to bridge the gap through open-mindedness and empathy, they couldn't shake off the feeling of being outsiders in a world that was fundamentally different from their own. But amidst the cultural divide, there were moments of connection and understanding that served to remind Zarnak and the cadets of their shared humanity. Whether it was sharing stories of their respective homeworlds or bonding over a shared love of music and art, they found common ground in the universal language of friendship. One such moment came during a cultural exchange event organized by the Academy, where Zarnak and the cadets had the opportunity to showcase their respective traditions and customs. As they gathered in the auditorium, Zarnak felt a sense of pride as he shared the rich tapestry of his alien culture with his human comrades. From the ancient rituals of his people to the martial traditions that had shaped him into the warrior he was today. In turn, the cadets shared glimpses of their own culture with Zarnak, inviting him to participate in their traditions and celebrations with open arms. And though the differences between them remained, they found that they had more in common than they had ever realized, their shared experiences serving to bridge the gap that had once seemed insurmountable. But perhaps the most profound moment of connection came during a quiet evening spent stargazing on the Academy's rooftop. As they looked out at the vast expanse of the cosmos, Zarnak and the cadets found themselves united by a shared sense of wonder and awe, their differences fading away in the face of the infinite beauty that surrounded them. In that moment, they realized that while their cultures and traditions may be different, They were all bound together by the same dreams and aspirations, the same hopes and fears. And though the journey ahead would be challenging, they knew that as long as they stood together, they could overcome any obstacle that stood in their way. And so, as they watched the stars twinkle overhead, Sarnak and the cadets made a silent vow to continue their journey of friendship and understanding, to embrace the differences that made them unique, and to celebrate the common humanity that united them all. For in the end, they knew that it was not their differences that defined them, but the bonds of friendship that held them together. As the end of Sarnak's training at the military academy drew near, a sense of bittersweet anticipation hung in the air. The time had come for him to bid farewell to the human cadets and return to his own people, but the thought of leaving behind the friends he had made filled him with a deep sadness. In the days leading up to his departure, Sarnak found himself reflecting on the journey he had undertaken since arriving at the academy. He had come as a stranger in a strange land, a lone soldier in a sea of unfamiliar faces, but through perseverance and determination, he had forged bonds of friendship that would last a lifetime. As he prepared to say goodbye to the cadets, Sarnak couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. He had grown accustomed to their company, their laughter and camaraderie serving as a balm to his weary soul. And though he knew that he would carry their memories with him wherever he went, the prospect of leaving them behind filled him with a profound sense of loss. But amidst the sadness, there was also a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the time they had shared together. From the adrenaline-fueled battles of the combat simulation to the quiet moments of camaraderie, shared over meals and stargazing sessions, Sarnak cherished every memory he had made with the cadets. And as the day of his departure arrived, Sarnak found himself surrounded by the cadets, their faces a mix of sadness and joy as they bid him farewell. There were tears shed and hugs exchanged, words of encouragement and promises to stay in touch long after he had left. But amidst the tearful goodbyes, there was also a sense of hope and optimism for the future. Though Sarnak would be returning to his own people, he knew that the bonds of friendship he had forged at the academy would endure. And as he looked out at the faces of his fellow soldiers, he felt a sense of pride in all that they had accomplished together. As he boarded the shuttle that would take him back to his homeworld, Sarnak couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness at the thought of leaving the academy behind. But as the shuttle lifted off into the sky, carrying him away from the only home he had known for the past few months, he knew that he was not alone. For though he may be leaving behind the cadets and the academy, he carried with him the lessons he had learned and the friendships he had forged along the way. And as he looked out at the stars twinkling in the distance, he knew that no matter where life took him, he would always carry a piece of the academy with him in his heart. And so, as the shuttle disappeared into the vast expanse of space, Sarnak made a silent vow to honor the memory of his time at the academy, to continue fighting for peace and justice wherever he went, and to never forget the friends he had made along the way. For in the end, it was not the battles he fought, or the victories he achieved that defined him, but the bonds of friendship that endured long after the final farewell had been said. Sarnak's shuttle journeyed through the vast expanse of space towards his homeworld. He found himself lost in thought, reflecting on the whirlwind of experiences he had encountered during his time at the Human Military Academy. The memories of the cadets, the battles, and the friendships he had forged danced through his mind, each one a testament to the profound impact the academy had left on him. In the quiet solitude of the shuttle, Sarnak found himself grappling with a myriad of emotions, ranging from sadness at leaving behind the friends he had made to excitement at the prospect of returning to his own people. But amidst the turmoil, there was also a sense of clarity and understanding, as he came to realize the true significance of his time at the academy. For Sarnak, the academy had been more than just a training ground for soldiers. It had been a crucible of transformation, a place where he had been forced to confront his own limitations and prejudices, and emerge stronger and wiser as a result. Through his interactions with the human cadets, he had learned valuable lessons about friendship, empathy, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. But perhaps the most profound lesson he had learned was that of cultural understanding and acceptance. In his time at the academy, Sarnak had come to realize that despite their differences, humans and his own people shared a common humanity that transcended the boundaries of race, language, and culture. And though they may have approached life from different perspectives, they were united by a shared desire for peace, justice, and prosperity for all. As the shuttle neared his homeworld, Sarnak felt a sense of anticipation building within him, tinged with a hint of apprehension at the thought of returning to a world that had once seemed so familiar and yet now felt strangely foreign to him. But as he gazed out at the stars twinkling in the distance, he knew that he carried with him the lessons he had learned at the academy, and that they would serve as a guiding light in the uncertain days ahead. And so, as the shuttle touched down on his homeworld surface, Sarnak stepped out into the familiar surroundings with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. Though he may have returned as a soldier, he knew that he was also an ambassador of peace and understanding, tasked with bridging the divide between his people and the humans he had come to call friends. As he made his way through the bustling streets of his homeworld's capital city, Sarnak couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the experiences he had undergone at the academy. Though the road ahead would be challenging, he knew that he was not alone, that he carried with him the support and friendship of the cadets who had stood by his side through thick and thin. And as he looked up at the endless expanse of sky stretching out above him, Sarnak felt a sense of hope swell within his chest. For though the journey ahead would be long and arduous, he knew that he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way, armed with the lessons he had learned and the friendships he had forged along the way. And with that thought in mind, Sarnak set off into the unknown, his heart filled with hope and determination, ready to embrace whatever the future held in store. For in the end, he knew that no matter where life took him, he would always carry with him the memories of his time at the Human Military Academy and the profound impact it had left on his life.